Listen up. That's all we have to do is listen. To the planet.
This is a climate damn emergency.
To the people. To each other. Listen Up East Coast starts now. Welcome back to another episode of Listen Up East Coast. My name is Louis Biontalillo, and today we are here with Mayor of Englewood, Michael Wilds. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure, Louis. Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you as well. And we're just going to talk today about the year that we've had this year, things that you've helped your residents with, and issues that residents are still facing today. So let's get right into it. My first question to you is, I know that you were mayor from 2004 to 2010 before your current term. So what made you want to come back to being mayor again?
So first of all, thank you, Louis. And OMG, what a year 2020 is and will be memorialized in history. I had the privilege actually of being a two-term city councilman from the 2nd Ward of Englewood, and then became mayor in 2004, and then elected to a second term thereafter. This is effectively my third term as mayor. I took a decade off between term 2 and 3. I missed it. You know, my little girl said to me, "Daddy, take your shoes off," one day. And I said, "Why, sweetheart?" She goes, "Well, then you can't run for mayor if you don't have shoes and you spend more time with me." I literally hung up my shoes. Now my youngest daughter doesn't care where my shoes are. She's in college herself. And, you know, with the stroke of a pen, I can help hundreds of thousands of people as an immigration lawyer. I'm actually a second generation immigration lawyer in my dad's law practice. But I can help millions of people one day in public service. And earning the public trust came at a very high price when my kids were young and my law firm needed me to steward it along. Now it's kind of on autopilot. I turned out 2 lawyers out of the 4 children that I have, and I have a little more time for the public good.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you back again for your third term. So that's exciting. Let's talk about this year specifically, though, because obviously, yes, you've been mayor for a long time. You took a little bit of a break and you came back in 2018. But this year, I'm sure, has been like no other. For many of us, for all of us, all of our lives have been impacted. What changes on your end as the mayor? What needs to be done differently because of COVID?
Well, first, I should say it's absolutely great to be back. I missed it. I know why I missed it. And earning that trust was a big job. I literally knocked on 5,300 doors. I ended up having surgery on my ankle after the campaign, walking around in a boot for many months. But I came back, Louis, in a post-Amazon world where I wanted to regenerate the city of Englewood. Now we're facing the beginning of the end of the pandemic. While the numbers are spiking high around Thanksgiving time as we're taping this interview, there's a vaccine within reach, and eventually this will be in our rearview mirror. But I have to tell you, the stakes are very high. The experience has been nothing but more than a humbling experience. You know, Louis, we don't get a pandemic handbook.
No.
We're writing one now for the next generation. We went from daily calls at City Hall on emergency services, police, fire, public works, recreation, all the different departments meeting every day, making sure that we have PPE and that we're taking measures to protect people. And then the national conversation of Black Lives Matters kind of interspersed itself, and we went from challenge to challenge, but we're trying to still shepherd people to safety and protecting all these important values. But we're writing a handbook now for the next generation. We're facing, in the city of trees, the city of Englewood, its namesake, rooted, I should say, in extraordinary scholarship and the best inventory of human resource anybody would ever want. I have to tell you that I am so enthralled with the first responders that we have, the police, the fire, the ambulance, our hospitals, our nurses, with our public works department. In the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of Black Lives Matter conversation, then trees are falling and the power goes out. This was biblical in its realization, and it really took great strides. And to work with people that you disagree with, and to show respect to people who are going through humbling experiences, to actually be able to be the first phone call that the governor received when he came out of surgery and we had the first case, to then receiving a text message from the governor today, the eve of Thanksgiving, just wishing me well because we all got closer. The world, as big as it is, got smaller, and all of our commonality and the decency of humanity kind of displayed itself once again. So all I can say is, in a long-about way, Lewis, we had a pandemic in the 1918. We had the Roaring '20s, and I cannot wait to put this in my rearview mirror.
I'm sure that you and me both, and most of the people around the world, I'm sure. You mentioned Governor Murphy. My next question for you is, do you support Governor Murphy's response to this pandemic? If you do, why? If there's specific parts that you don't, what are those parts?
I do. I fundamentally believe he's a good man, and he handled himself admirably. I see the way the mayor of New York, the governor of New York, and other municipalities have handled themselves. And fundamentally, the governor stepped into a role that there is no training for, but he handled it decisively. It's not easy to execute on orders, and there is politics between the 21 counties in the state, and municipalities have different needs and resources that need to be deployed. But he was available, he was accessible. There were some fundamental decisions and issues in the very beginning that I thought his team was a little slow to pick up. I saw a massive exodus from Manhattan happening. That was a big opportunity for the state of New Jersey to kind of deploy its realtors and its notion of business in a way that would populate parts of the state that needed greater population and resource and support. So I think that the governor did an exceptional job under the circumstance. I'm honored to know him. It's, again, you're being taught by fire in the middle of it. And I think he's earned and maintained the trust of the community. And he's a man of science and fact. I don't think he's a man of conjecture and hyperbole. He's also extraordinarily accessible. I have to tell you, I had two granddaughters 6 months and 4 months ago in the middle of this pandemic, and I married off another child in between. And I had to call the governor to find out what I could and couldn't do. So there's a humanity to him, in addition to the public persona that I respected as well.
For sure. It's more than just the face that we see every other day on his public briefings. He's a person as well. And I've been trying to tell people that.
Yeah, I think also we have to understand that we've had in our state, sadly, people who've had the vision of wanting to be governor, but had no idea when they got there what they were going to do. You have to be a person of depth that will deploy something when you're given that trust. And my motto has always been public service, public trust. This is a job that can be taken from you the minute you are not humbled by its majesty and the nobility of actually respecting people you disagree with and representing everybody, whether they voted or like you or not.
So we talked a lot about Governor Murphy and his response to the pandemic, but what have you personally done for your residents to make sure that they're taken care of?
So, first of all, this occupies my entire life. I have cell phones for my different responsibilities, but my personal cell phone is in the speed dial of so many different residents across the community. First of all, I did a double dive, as you would, into making sure that I went out to commercial proprietors and residents to make sure they were safe and that they could carry on their lives, that people who needed medicines delivered and content protected on their blocks from neighbors and the lack of social distancing would be protected. I went hat in hand and with my ribbon cutting scissors to businesses that were still investing in Englewood to make sure that they would continue to invest in Englewood, running campaigns in the different seasons for spring, summer, and now Christmas shopping to make sure that the proprietors could remain open, but can do it in a smart way. We have proprietors that are still taking advantage of stuffing meters and not making productive use of our central business district. And we have people that are scared when they see social gatherings and so forth. So balancing the financial interests of both local residents and commercial proprietors and making sure that the health department and the director that we have rules the roost. That I'm not playing politics, but I'm playing towards the health and the safety of the community is absolutely critical. I made sure that there was a proper deployment of police and fire and ambulance services working in conjunction with our hospital to make sure that testing and that emergency services from ICU, nursing, and everything was actually in order, and that we understood the needs that they had so that we could actually make things seamless for residents. I imbued and dove into a major campaign after the first wave to make sure that people took care of their own health and safety, strokes and heart attacks and cancer checks. Those screenings were very heavily impacted because people were scared to go and venture out into the medical service area. And more importantly than everything, people's humanity and public spirit. I convened coffee with the mayor since March. I have not missed a single Friday, other than maybe on one Jewish holiday, where I host on the library's Facebook page and Zoom a 1 to 2 hour session on coffee with the mayor, where I review the week's accomplishments. I give people transparently in the pages of notes that I take every day, and I'm up to page 280 something worth of notes that I started, where I literally tell them about the emails and the goings on and the sometimes controversy that's going on as well. And I embrace difference and disparity as best as I can. I'm also a Sabbath observant Jew, and despite that, I've walked on 15. Last number was 15 Black Lives Matter marches, taking me miles to get there and miles to walk back, often in inclement weather. But I walk in solidarity because these protests are peaceful. I prayed witness to an avalanche on one of these that I was concerned about, but I'm working to increase engagement between the police department and the community when it comes to wearing body cameras, a potential civilian review, and ultimately greater engagement with our youth for the police department. So I work with the things that were broken before the pandemic, and I work to improve people's public safety and confidence in government. There's a homeless issue, there are housing issues, there are so many people because of the billions of dollars that have been dispersed within our state for unemployment, so important. And then, you know, some good old mayoring, going to the local hotel and saying to them, there are nurses and doctors that can't go home because they're taking care of people. Can you come up with a special rate? And then they step up. So an Englewood resident for $49 can have a day or a night's rest in a local hotel so that they can get the emotional support and the physical support. I've raised literally in the last weeks $30,000 for the food disparity. There is extraordinary needs of hunger in our city. Working with the World Central Kitchen, table to table, and the leaders in the Center for Food Action and other wonderful regional groups, and then going to some of their wealthier commercial proprietors and saying to them, I need help, and getting checks and delivering it to the blind spots of people who needed it. So in the order of things, I can say keeping people safe and up on the science of social distancing, making sure that we have very strong staff and tracking and case tracking that is on people who are COVID positive, making sure that the food inequity and the needs are being met, and also the emotional support. I have not stopped doing weddings since March. I was the driveway mayor, and now I do them in my backyard, always wearing a mask and embracing life and love, reminding people when I post all of these things on my robust Facebook page that life goes on, that this will be in history. And what did Englewood and its mayor do? We embrace life. We realize how precious it is, and we tried to bring more people together at the same time.
It's definitely important to that I'm glad that you're saying that it's more than just the virus, that it's also, we also need to keep people's faith up, keep people's hope up throughout this entire thing, because I know that's been a major struggle. I'm at Montclair State University. I know many people, most students here are struggling with that as well.
Very upsetting to see that, the leadership in the churches and the synagogues and the mosque that we have doing Zoom sessions, if you would, with the leadership of each of these communities, cautioning their parishioners when they were in breach of social distancing guidelines and encouraging people to come together, having Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 9/11 events in a way that would give first responders and our police, our finest and bravest, the sense of support and love that they need, and then literally raising thousands of dollars and distributing food to volunteers from the county and from the region who come into our city and testing people. So all I can say is there isn't enough time for me to explain the deployment, the time that this takes, but it's a labor of love. I'm not even exhausted from it. I exhaust people every Friday when they listen to my Facebook page, the Coffee with the Mayor, because it seems robust. It's supposed to be a part-time mayoralty. We're a city manager form of government. But they placed me at the helm at a time when much more was needed and with much less resource. And we have to make sure that we have our house in order when we walk out of this thing.
So one last question about the pandemic. You mentioned before that you weren't given a handbook, but rather you're writing about it. You're writing that handbook right now. Now that we're seeing this second wave and we're in it, we're not even approaching it anymore. We're in it. What's the one thing? What's rule number one of that handbook that you learned from the first lockdown? And how are you better prepared to take care of the people of Englewood in case there's a second one?
I teach 2 classes a semester in a law school. And part of the journey of being an immigration lawyer is reminding people that America's golden doors are open to the greatest risk takers and entrepreneurs we've ever had. If I have to coin, the first thing I would tell law students starting law school, the first hour, the first paragraph, and if I have to do it for constituents, and if I have to talk with the sense of efficacy that we've had during this, it would be discipline. The discipline of saving money in municipal finance, the discipline of preparing our health department, our hospital, and our emergency services with proper personal protective equipment, PPE, the discipline of visiting people that were sick and filling in the gaps in our different departments so that services were not impacted. I would say that's the greatest sense of propriety that we have. As a father, as a husband, as now a grandfather, the discipline of realizing how fragile life is and how you have to save not just money, but your energy for more important things, to dispose of things that are wasted and to concentrate on the substance. I walked those 15 weekends with the Black Lives Matter walk. And I learned so much more about Malcolm X and Dr. King and the differences in their leadership and the substance of people's character, the content of character, the sense of excellence that leaders in a different generation imbued upon us. That Constitution that we swear our allegiance to was an act of brilliance and a sense of discipline that requires us in each generation to redefine, and it regenerates new flesh. But the definition, I think, of public service and the second wave to me is a sense of propriety and discipline.
All right, thank you. And we're just going to move on to Black Lives Matter. You gave us a nice segue there for a second. So obviously you agree with the movement. You've been on those walks. You've learned a lot. But my follow-up question there is, do you agree with part of that movement that says abolish the police? Do you think we should be abolishing the police right now?
I don't agree with the notion of defunding police. I don't. I'm formerly an auxiliary police officer myself with the NYPD for 10 years, and I was a federal prosecutor. We have a spate of shootings going on in our city where we need more police as a deterrent. I think, and I have reveled in the nobility of policing as a young man myself. And I have always imbued and educated my children to thank a police officer, to wish them safety. Stay safe is what my kids will see me when I walk by an officer. I believe fundamentally that we need to have greater accountability. You cannot have the police police themselves. Technology has to be there so that forensically we have implicit or objective proof of circumstance so that we avoid the travesty of a George Floyd. And ultimately, I believe that there is no substitute for constant education so that if somebody comes into the police department and starts to develop tendencies based on the exhaustion of the job, we all turn to our police to do more with less. In the last administration, they were trying to get police to have greater responsibility when it came to U.S. immigration and other things like that. They have such limited time, and it's a physically exhaustive job with extraordinary risks and the brazenness of criminality. We have to realize that. So if the notion of defunding police means that we should defund the police of military and firearms and all this other part of it and give in more social science and psychological support and defray it, then I am a fan of imbuing some kind of mix. But the city of Englewood needs to understand that we have the ability to have 85 officers. We only have 73. We have 14 to 15 walkouts or resignations. A walkout is when they leave, they get a ceremonial walkout. And our deputy chief is due to resign on December 1st, 6 days from now. So there is right now a vacuum that's being created, and there is a divide that is palpable based on the politics of what we see coming out of our police department that is very scary. It's scary to me as a leader in the city because we need more hands on deck. And the problem is that the criminals now are more sophisticated than ever. They will wait out a deployment of officers so that they can compensate for it, or they will know because officers are deployed in one part of the city that another part of the city is ripe for vulnerability for burglaries. So how do you deal with all these multiple values at the same time? Well, you don't come up with, are you for or against? Do you defund the police or not? Because these are not absolute conversations. There are shades of gray. There are times where the deployment of police is inappropriate or not, was mistaken. I saw this in the rally that we had, where the police, in my opinion, did not process something, and rather than de-escalating, allowed something to escalate. On the other hand, we have to make sure that we do take a deep breath and make sure that the officers' conduct is always up on review, and we hold them to the high standard that we've grown accustomed to having them at. So it's a work in progress. And the Boy Scout in me tells me that I have to be less naive. And at the same time, I still have to protect my brothers and sisters in blue uniform because they are doing something that is nothing less than heroic every day of their lives.
All right. Thank you for that. And one last question. Well, I have two more questions. After this year, if you could do one thing completely different than what you do, because we all make mistakes. The governor has made mistakes, as you said before. The president has made mistakes. I've made mistakes. What's a mistake that you made this year that you think that you've learned from?
I underestimated the resiliency of our community. I was worried with a couple of town bigots that people would not realize the humanity in the leadership that we have. The mistake that I made, and that I am so grateful for having made, is that we couldn't carry ourselves through this without a real city manager in place. I want to credit the council president and all the members of the city council. They may not get along with one another, but they all love the city. We love things differently. And that resiliency, that lack of faith that I had in the very beginning, I learned very quickly when I saw challenge after challenge. When I saw my public works, my police and my fire, and I went on runs with them, being deployed in the middle of massive storms and trees are falling and destroying property in the middle of a pandemic at a time where social distancing and Black Lives Matter marches were current, and people handled challenge within challenge after challenge with great resiliency. So my mistake was ever doubting the greatest part of this city, and that is in its humanity. I'll never do that again, and I want people to take pride in that.
And the final question I have for you, and then I'll let you go because I know with all of this, you must still be very busy. After this insane year, which is not over yet, we still have months to go with this pandemic. Racial justice will be an issue for a long time to come. With all of these issues, would you run for mayor again?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the job. I love the notion of helping people, placing community over local interests, and my own interests for that matter. My daughter does not mind my doing this. My children are hearing of their father ensconced in trying to improve the world around us. We will be judged by our children and our grandchildren by what we do, not what we say. And in my faith, people ask, why are we the children of Israel? Why aren't we the children of Abraham or Isaac? And the reason is because Israel was the only one in the Bible who connected with his grandchildren. And there's no story between Abraham and Isaac and their grandchildren. We are going to be judged by what we do. And my work was interrupted by a pandemic, but I'm not finished. And there are a lot of things that I'd like to see through. There are a lot of people that would like to invest in the city of Englewood that we need to work with. I want to see a community center approved, built, and developed in our city as well. It's absolutely critical for us to have that. And I don't know that anybody else will have that kind of zeal and understands the financial and the political metrics that need to be done. So I am vested in running again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time here. I know that you're a very busy person. And thank you so much for the work that you do. Again, for everybody, that was Mayor of Englewood, Mayor Michael Wilds. And thank you again. Again, that was our interview with Mayor of Englewood, Mayor Michael Wilds. Next, keeping with Englewood as well, and right here in New Jersey, we're going to be speaking with Ainsworth Minot. And what Ainsworth does is he really fights for what he believes in. And that's all I'm going to give you for now. Just a little tease. So let's get right into it. He's a fantastic person. So here's our interview with Ainsworth Minot. So Thank you so much for joining us, Ainsworth Minot. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. And I'm glad to have you here on the podcast today. If you don't already know, Listen Up East Coast is all about talking about issues that aren't really talked about that much. And we like to not only talk about the issues, but also possibly some solutions that we could have to those issues that everyday people are facing. So first off, I'm going to ask you to explain to the listeners, why are you here? What do you focus on in your life?
Right now, I'm here because I'm really been focusing on a lot of the issues that's been surrounding the country, and it's not just the country, but it's in our local neighborhoods. Where I am, or what I've been focusing on is Englewood, New Jersey. During the things that's been transpired since the George Floyd case, it kind of gave me a push for me to do something here in our town, because it just made me, take everything into perspective. And even though, someone didn't get murdered recently or anything like that with the police, I felt like, let's like think forward and go ahead and make sure, our community is safe, our community is held accountable, everyone, in position to make sure we don't have those situations, or if we did in the past, we don't let something like that happen again, and that's why I started getting involved in the movement. And I felt like, what, why not me? Why can't I start something? Why not just a regular person? And when it got to the point it started to affect my kids, my 7-year-old, he's scared of the cops, that became an issue for me. And I couldn't just sit around and just go to work and do my daily things anymore. I felt like, as a father, I had to take a stand. And that's where I got myself involved in this, big scheme of things, but here locally in Englewood. Yeah.
So obviously you've been a huge organizer, especially in Englewood, of these Black Lives Matter protests. What is the most important thing for you? What do you want to get out of this all? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for change, and it's systematically. It's not just with the police. It's with our government. It's the way we go about our daily way of life. The things that people are calling the cops on people for silly things. Being standing in the wrong, not technically the wrong neighborhood, but somewhere you normally don't live, and just those uncomfortable situations that we're not talking about. That we just sweep under the rug and we act like these things aren't there. And it's a whole lot of different issues. Our education system in Englewood, the funding. We don't have a recreation. A real facility for our kids in Englewood. And it's just a detrimental effect in the long run. And we're really not paying attention to these things. We just pay attention to the things that are just right in front of our face, right in front of the TV. But these are the long standing things going on in the community. And I'm just really about community awareness. Who's your elected officials? What are these people doing? Like, where's the budget going? Like, that's the sort of things I think that, even though we all look to the presidential elections, but I think at home locally, we can have more of an effect if we really go out there and find out what's going on and get everyone to rally around. Because I think for the most part, from what I see, even with the kickback here and there, everyone wants the right things to be done. And I think people just got to take this step to, put themselves out there a little bit, show people that, we can all be positive. And I think trying to get people unified. And that's my big thing, more than, people try to twist the narrative, but it's about unification. It's about love, and you need everyone. And that's what I'm about,
So
and that's what I want to do. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And here at Listen Up East Coast, we had the opportunity to actually interview Mayor Michael Wilds. And in the interview, we spoke about a plethora of things, not only Black Lives Matter, but the pandemic as well. But as we were speaking about Black Lives Matter, he claims that he has been a big proponent of the movement and that he's been with you guys. Do you agree with that?
I do agree that he has, been out there physically. He might have not finished all the walks. He has his Sabbath and certain, religious things that, I know he has. It's very, dear to what he does. But it's I always tell people there's a difference between being there and trying to help and do something about it. And I love his support. He has been supportive of everything I've done as far as the marches and getting things going in the city. But we need more deeper support than that. We need, support where, you're really coming out here, you're really being a voice, and you're not just, just like we say in the movement, silence is violence, so he has to speak up a little bit more. We need, even with the incident that happened with me, he kind of stood by the side. Even now, he's not really come out and say, flat out like this was wrong. And, he's playing the political game. And that's where, us as citizens, and we have to hold these elected officials accountable, because I'm being honest, if I was mayor and if I'm going to be supporting Black Lives Matter and things are like this that happen, I'm not going to just be sitting here and being and toting that line. I'm going to make a definitive stand, because at the end of the day, this is about what's right and what's wrong. And there's no middle ground in this for me. It's either you're on the right side or you're on the wrong side, and there's no in between. And to me, so whoever's playing the in between, you're really not really much of a support for you just, being there. And that's not good enough for me. And that shouldn't be good enough for the people as well. You got to be the mayor for everyone, not just some of Englewood.
So you mentioned the incident that happened to you. I know what happened to you because I've researched you a little bit. But for those of us who don't, could just explain briefly what happened?
So a couple of weeks ago, I was having a Black Excellence march. It wasn't even a protest. It was just a march. It was just to show Black excellence. And I felt like, I wanted to do something a little bit smoother. So I decided, we're all going to dress up. I wore a suit. It was only maybe 10 of us. It was a very small group. And as we marched, we didn't even get a block, almost a block or two into our route, close to where I grew up and where I live in Englewood, coincidentally, you know, as I was walking, I looked to my left and I saw a group of young ladies and they were like involved in a physical altercation. And, I'm from Englewood. I'm a teacher. Like, that's my normal thing. I have kids. I have a 15-year-old daughter. So there's certain things that I would do naturally. And if that was my child in a neighborhood where I knew everyone, I would hope someone would stop and intervene before it could get to escalate into something worse. So as we were marching, we got to the corner of William Street and Englewood Avenue, and I turned to my left where those new buildings are, and I looked, and I was like, and I recognized it was a fight. So my immediate instinct was I just started going over there, and as I was going over, I was just yelling at the megaphone, just saying, hey, trying to get their attention so they can stop. So I rushed in there. I got in the middle of the fight. I grabbed one of the young ladies. It's my best thing to think, remove someone, and then there's no fight. So I literally wrapped my arms around her and picked her up and moved her across the street. Then I put her down and just was getting her out of the way. So I knew the fight was over at that point, trying to console her. The situation was calm. No one was yelling. The fight was over. And we were out there with Englewood cops, which escorts us all the time. But that week, unfortunately, my regular crew wasn't there, and similar. And how coincidentally, my regular crew is the same crew of officers that now are trying to get kicked out or suspended for the PBA in Englewood as well. Isn't that very coincidental as well? So that crew wasn't there. So the new officers that arrived, which pretty much the same Englewood officers, and there were a couple of Bergen County officers which were in the area because there were some shootings going on earlier in that week. So there were other officers from other counties just around. But the officers that came from Englewood, they all knew me very well. We were all in the court case a couple of months before that with the Fred police case. This is a guy that one of Englewood officers who got caught sleeping on the job 4 times, even on a high-speed chase. So I was there supporting the chief and deputy chief. The courtroom was split. We were all the citizens and the people supporting the deputy chief, who's African-American, both of them, which is very unique in Bergen County. And the whole other side was these same officers who attacked me. The officer that came out there and said, no, he was sitting in the courtroom with us on that other side. They know exactly who I am. And I've been hearing internally that they were tired of, blocking the streets off for me to protest. They were tired of staying for extra overtime. They were supposed to volunteer. And none of these guys wanted to do that anymore. So even before that day, a lot of people that don't really understand, it had nothing to do with that day. It was more the stuff that's been going on for months with me and what I've been representing and supported. There actually was that vote of no confidence by a lot of the officers, which is the PBA side in Englewood. And coincidentally, the only other officers, those 8 other officers, which the minority officers supported the chief. They're the same ones that they're suspended and just started a new union recently. So that day I went and broke up the fight. I went across, that same officer, he came, and the first thing out of his mouth was no more protests. And I'm like, you came there for altercation. Why was your first thing out of your mouth was about the protest? Me realizing that he just doesn't want us to be protesting from the get-go, from what's been going on, because he doesn't like me. And he's actually been one of the officers that's been there as, blocked off the street for us, but he never says anything to us. I know their demeanor, so we get it. So that day when he came out there, I just needed clarity because I was like, we just broke up a fight. I did a good Samaritan deed. If you guys even listen to the audio, there was no yelling or screaming. When I broke up the fight, we got it. Everything was calm until those new officers came. That's where all the craziness started, and it became some macho thing where I was hearing the officers themselves say, we're in charge. And we're like, this has nothing to do with anyone being in charge. You came, there's no more fight, investigate the situation, but to say no protest, us stop, get in the cars and stop, that had nothing to do with the situation. So that just showed that they came in with predetermined notions about me, myself, and what I've been doing, because we did nothing wrong. And then it got to the point where it got into this. And if you saw the video, we backed up all the way across the street. So how much backing up did you want us to, at what point were and they were still coming at us. And I came away because I'm the leader of the protest. I get these permits every single week. The council, the mayor, the chief, they sign off on this. So for some low-level officer who's not with us at the protest to just come and say, stop the protest, that's very weird for the protesters not being any part of what's going on for them to investigate. We actually helped the situation. So why are you coming and focusing on us? That I just couldn't, you could even hear it in my voice. I was so confused. Like, what do you mean no protest? Because we had nothing to do with anything going wrong. We actually helped the situation, but there was the animosity from months built up. I even met with the PBA president, Ron Lane, in Noches, Colombia, after like the 1st or 2 March with the Fred police case. Me and him sat down, we talked, but I came to realize when an officer agrees, I asked them, okay, if you're having a supervising officer and he's sleeping on the job, would you rather him working or someone else that doesn't sleep on the job? This guy he looked at me and said, no, I'd rather take the guy that's sleeping 4 times on the job than someone not sleeping. And I said, wow, even though he's risking your life being sleeping on the job in a high-speed chase, you'd rather take him over another person. And I said, this is what's wrong. It's because this is buddy-buddy system you guys have. Just because he's your friend, you're willing to support him even when he's doing things wrong in the department. And this is the problem. Because to me, if a guy gets caught sleeping 4 times where in a high-speed chase, the dispatcher has to get out of his room and go wake him up, that's a problem. And all officers should be concerned, whether he's your friend or not, because he's risking people's lives and the city's lives in danger. And he's getting $174,000 a year to do this job. And most of those cops from this PBA and these new officers in Englewood, do you think they live in Englewood? No, they live an hour or 2 away. And this, even after the incident, the mayor came to me himself and said, Ainsworth, you know what, you were right. Because I've been telling him for months ago about community policing. You need to have officers from your community that cares about the people from your community. That's how you solve these issues. You got guys that don't know. If it was other officers like some of those 8 officers, that would have never happened. But a few rotten apples spoil the whole bunch. And right now, they're taking over that whole bunch. Because the PBA and those rogue officers, besides the chief, when you remove the chief and the deputy chief, you know who else is in charge, who's in those higher rankings, the captains, lieutenants, sergeants, it's those guys. And that's a problem for me, and it's a lot of infighting, and it's wrong. Because I even said to one of the officers months ago, what happens when you guys get called to a situation and you guys don't get along? What kind of situation are you putting in the citizens of Englewood when you guys are divided in our police department? And that's an issue. That's a huge issue. And from that incident, they arrested me. They slammed me on the ground. They arrested me and Vic Senior, Joe, and his mom. He's 51 years old. This kid is 21. He's a little kid. And his mom. We're in suit. I had my megaphone in my arm the whole time. How do I look like I'm hurting someone? I was backing up the whole time. And the second time while I went back there, you could even hear it on the tape. I'm calling Joe. I was trying to get them out of there because my thing was, someone even else said it to me, let's get back to marching. And I was trying to get back to marching. But when I went back the second time, I put both arms. I had one arm on Joe. I was behind him and his dad. And I was like, come on, Joe, let's go. But Joe had the sign. They were pushing him. They kind of slid away. And then I got in front of that officer with that picture, me and him standing there. But if you see the bigger picture from the video, it was because of the back and forth pushing from those other officers that made it seem like I touched him. My arms were to my side the whole time. I did not lift a finger. How do I get an assault charge on a police officer? After I get slammed, my ribs is all sore and swollen. My hip is hurt, my knee. How do I get an assault charge, which is a felony charge? In that incident, it's ridiculous. And then to have the PBA put out some big statement, put my name in it. Like I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. I have no criminal record. I've had little silly charges just like everyone else. I'm not, innocent as a young kid, but I'm a mature adult at this age. I've not been out there trying to do anything wrong. We've been handing out food for the food pantry for months. I've been giving back to my community. I've given free camps in McKay Park with my own money to give back to my community. I'm someone they've called from when I was at Colgate to come back and talk to the recreation football kids. This is my background, and to have these guys just try to berate me, make memes on social media. I've gotten threatened. Even 2 officers from Hackensack, Anthony Ferrioli, they both got fired from Hackensack. I stood up for a kid, DJ, from Bergen Catholic, about him taking a knee in a video in a game. And these guys were attacking this kid. So I just went up there and I simply said in the NorthJersey.com post, like, listen, he's a kid. He's expressing his right, just like Colin Kaepernick. And look, everyone came back and said, look, Kaepernick was right. But now, like, why we can't give this kid the chance? And I just came and said that, these guys inboxed me, put my mom's address on social media, threatened me, said they were outside. These are officers of the law. And then someone looked up their record, Anthony Ferrioli, you assaulted a citizen, falsified documents. These are the people I'm dealing with, and they're trying to vilify me. I'm a criminal, and I never took an oath to be a police officer. And these are the systematic things that everyone hasn't been seeing. We've been dealing with these things as a kid growing up, and we've talked them, and no one believes us. No one believes us that these officers, they walk around, and it's this power trip. It's this power trip, and it needs to stop. We all need to have a fair chance. We all need to have a fair chance. And I just want to tell everyone that doesn't know me, this is about love, unity, and peace. Yes, I will stand firm because I have to protect myself. I have a family. And then throughout this history of everyone that stand up, look at what they've done to them. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, I can go on and on down the list. Look what they've done to us when we stand up. It's just terrible. It's really terrible because outside of me, I have a family, who depends on me every single day. I've been doing these marches almost every single week. And to come out there, to have officers from my own town, I went to DC, I went to Tenafly, I went to Bogota, I went to Bergenfield, I went to all over. I went to Fairlawn. I went to so many other places outside of my own hometown, and to get assaulted in Englewood, New Jersey, where I've given back probably the most since I've been on this earth. The officers, they know me, and then to try to vilify me and assault me in my own town, that speaks volumes to what's going on in this bigger part of this country. And we will not let up. I will not stand down, because this is what's right and not what's wrong. And if I have to sacrifice myself, I'm willing to do that, because a best friend of mine told me, Ains, this is something if you're going to do, you got to do it all the way or don't do it at all. If you look around, these other towns around, I was one of the first towns in Jersey to do this march, over 1,100 people. This is not for the moment. And I told everyone when I started, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue, and I'm going to continue. You don't see the consistency in these other local towns, but in Englewood, New Jersey, I promise you, there's room for change. And I think there's enough like-minded people like myself for me to keep pushing for the right things for everyone, not just for myself, not just for the Black community, for us all. And this is why I preach humanity. Take religion out of it, take the race out of it, take what you believe. If you can't fight for humanity as any people over your religion, over what political party you believe in, if you can't see clearly through that, then something is wrong. And this is why I take the stance I take. And yes, Black lives matter, but all lives matter. Of course they do. Of course they do. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and people got to understand, we got to stick together. We need to stick together. I'd be a fool to be preaching hate in this moment in climate. I'd be a fool for the things my ancestors have done to get to this point to be preaching that. That's not what I'm about. And I just want to make that clear to everyone that's listening.
Thank you for all that. And one thing that it's all right. One thing that you said that I did enjoy hearing is what you said that your friend said. I don't remember the exact words, but go all the way through or don't do it.
Or don't go it at all. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really powerful, because it's showing that you are going all the way through. Like you said, these other towns, they don't have that consistency. You look at Twitter, the consistency is not there. You see the people that posted the black square on Instagram, 6 months ago, and haven't given it a second thought at all. And these are the stories that we like to really put out there on this podcast because we feel it's important. We don't think that this is a trend, nor should it be a trend. We're talking about real life, real issues, real people. And so I thank you for all of that because that was really moving, that story that you told us.
You're welcome, man. It's a lot, man. It's a lot. And even in the short amount of time that I've been doing this, like there have been changes already. I've seen them. There have been changes. Even we supported Emily from Englewood Cliffs, and that's our neighbor in town. She was in school, and I made sure, because I was there the first one, I made sure I rallied behind her, and we got everyone we could, and we went up there without her even being here. And I got her approval. I spoke to her and made sure we preached her message, you know. And even though that's not my town per se, but that's a neighboring town. I've been up to Englewood Cliffs, and we shouldn't always consider it our town because you know what? We personalize everything, but it's all our towns because one injustice, one place is an injustice somewhere else, you know, and we all have to stick together. And we supported her, and not for nothing, they changed that. Now they have that housing up there, you know, so that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Little steps, you know, and just the little things that I've been doing over the last couple of months. Yeah, I've been involved in Englewood and but I'm even more entrenched now, you know, the food pantry stuff every Tuesdays we do, just being around the businesses I've went up to and talked to business owners and just getting the community collectively together. That wasn't going on. You know, just the awareness of different situations, who's your council members, what's going on in the city, just those little intricate things. People weren't even talking about those things. Doing the census, I gave up my own free time on Palisades Avenue, going around, going door to door. That's things people don't even know I do. You know, so it's more than just the marches. The marches is the small part you guys see every week. There's so many things I'm doing during the week, reaching out to different people. You know, talking to Senator Weinberg, talking to the mayor, you know, on a regular basis. You know, this is not just when you guys see me and him marching. Like, I'm constantly in contact, talking to the chief. You know, there's other people that we all need to reach out to. But to me, like, it's a network. So, yes, we're focused on Englewood to a certain extent, but it's a bigger picture. And we have to have all of us together, you know, to make change. And that's why when the movement started, I made sure I went to other towns. I supported them. I helped them, whoever needed to, you know, get organized or needed any advice and anything, or just support, you know, bodies. I made sure I went there because I knew in the long run, at the end of the day, it's for all the same things. And, you know, one day I might need them to support us, you know, and even within the marches, you know how many people came out from other towns that supported Englewood when Englewood's residents are sitting home? You know, so that's the whole thing too. People got to understand. You got to be inclusive. You got to preach an inclusive message. You need all the help we can get. You know, you can't isolate people. You can't push people away. You know, the differences make us all the more better in a melting pot like this country. And we got to get back to that. That's what I grew up on when I was a little kid about this melting pot. It still should be a melting pot. Where have that mentality gone? You know, and we got to get back to that because we all play an intricate part to make up this country from everywhere. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Jamaica. Look what I've came here and accomplished and done, you know? So just imagine if we didn't let people in this country, you wouldn't have someone like me doing what I'm doing and helping the cause and being a good citizen and paying my taxes and going to college and doing the things that they say to do to be and have an American dream, you know? So we have to hold those values still true because they are. And I'm a believer. We just got to get everyone else on board. That's it.
So I have one or two more questions and then we'll wrap it up.
No.
Obviously, myself as a white individual, I will never understand or feel anything that you as a Black individual will feel. How can somebody like me help this movement overall?
Everyone can play a part. Everyone can play a part, and all the connections, you know, even if you're not marching, you know, there's things that you can do Just like some of my friends that come to the march, they're videographers. They record, that's putting it out. They take pictures. That's a part of helping the movement. You know, just coming out, support, donating to a worthy cause. That's some part of helping the movement. There's so many different ways. Outside of you marching, outside of you actually using your voice. There's ways of helping us. Of connections in your industry. Help someone, help an African American, change someone's life that might not have that opportunity that you have, because to me, that's the growth. And that's where I come into as an African American, as someone that's gotten a certain point in life. I can't just do what I do and just walk off into the sunset. I got to give back to someone else. I got to throw someone else a gem. I got to help develop or cultivate that same inner being that got me to where I am for someone else, so that can develop, so that can trickle down to another family, so it can spread. That's what we got to help. That's what we can do. So there's so many other people. I have so many brothers that looks just like you, that they're helping behind the scenes in so many other ways. I have friends that are lawyers. I have friends that I can talk to legally about certain things that in these situations that helps, because the average person that looks like me, they don't have that type of support, and that's the thing about higher education and going to a place like Colgate University. It's so diverse. And when you graduate there and the people you meet there, those connections, they last for a lifetime. And those are some of the things that I use to help a lot of people that look like me, that might not have those opportunities and those connections, because these are the things that makes us successful, like you guys, So that's something you can do, behind the scenes. There's so many different ways,
And if there's one more thing that you can add, I know that this movement for you is not going anywhere. This movement in Englewood is not going anywhere. You guys keep pushing forward. You've already proved it's not a trend. It's past the trend point, if you will.
I definitely have. I'm getting assaulted. I'm getting death threats, and now I got a felony charge. This thing's serious, so I got to ride it out. There's no turning back. There's no turning back.
Is there anything else you'd like to add for the listeners to hear?
I just want to tell everyone, it's a new day. It's a new day. We're not going backwards anymore. We're not going backwards anymore. For all the things that's happened through history, certain things, sometimes you might look at them as something bad happening, but I'm looking at it a little bit different. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you. Thank you. You woke everyone up. We needed this. We needed this, because these low-lying level things that we weren't seeing out in the open, they would have still continued, and we wouldn't be doing anything about it. So for now, even in this moment, for things to be the way they are, you got to ruffle somebody's feathers. You got to shake it up. There's never been change without conflict in the history of this country. The biggest changes came through what? Conflict. Not saying I want people to lose their lives. Don't get it wrong. But there has to be some kind of conflict for a bigger change. And to me, this is it. This is it. And for Donald Trump to become president, to show the divide in the country and everything to just matriculate to the way it is, to me, this is exactly what we need going forward to fix this problem and unify everyone once and for all. So I think that's the biggest thing I want everyone to know. So this is the time. The window of opportunity is open. Let's work. Let's work together and let's fix it once and for all.
Wise words, and thank you so much for being here on Listen Up East Coast. That was Ainsworth Minot. Thank you so much for being here again, and I really do hope. One last thing.
No problem. Go ahead.
If anybody wants to help the cause, wants to get out there, march with you guys, how can they get more information on that?
Okay, my handle on Instagram, it's Heal the World 1238, and then my other one on Instagram too is Minott Athletics, MINOTT Athletics. Okay, on Instagram, I do have a GoFundMe too, So you can support me that way on Heal the World. So, just anyway, normally, I post all my updates on the marches weekly. I'm definitely having a march this Saturday for sure, probably at 1 p.m. They're very consistent. The only reason I didn't do it, I took a break because of the holidays, just to give everybody some family time, which I needed it myself. But pretty much every Saturday or Friday, but I'm going to try to keep it on these Saturdays, 1 p.m., Englewood, New Jersey. Manada Athletics, Heal the World, 1238 on IG. Hit me up, come through, march with us, walk with us, and just help and spread the word. Spread the word of unity. Even if you don't come and show up, just spread the word of love, unity, and togetherness. And even this simply as that simple gesture alone will help make change. Please help and support the cause. Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much, Ainsworth, for being here today. We appreciate you telling us your story and what you are fighting for. We'd also like to thank all of the loyal listeners of Listen Up East Coast. This wouldn't be possible without all of you. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This way you never miss out on our new episodes. Wherever you are, don't forget the message of this podcast. Let's listen to each other. It can make a world of difference. Until next time, I'm Louis Biontalillo, and we'll see you soon.